It all started on a cold Tuesday morning. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, and a slow drizzle tapped softly against the cracked window of Elena's small, crumbling apartment. She tied her worn-out shoes, kissed her daughter's forehead still warm with fever, and stepped out, clutching an envelope she could no longer afford to ignore. Rent was overdue. The pharmacy wouldn't give more medicine on credit. And hope was running thin. Elena Morales had worked every job imaginable: laundry, waitressing, dishwashing, but this new offer was different. It came in an unmarked envelope left at the community center where she volunteered. Just one line. We're looking for someone honest, discreet, no questions asked. Call this number. Desperation doesn't ask for details. It just moves. And Elena moved. She called. The voice on the other end was male, stern, but polite. Come to 47 West Hill Drive, Ive. Noon sharp. Don't be late. She wasn't. She arrived early. Even soaked from the rain, she held her chin high. The mansion loomed before her like a modern-day castle-tall iron gates, flawless white stone, manicured hedges that didn't look real. The man who opened the door looked like he belonged to another world. Tall, in a custom suit that probably cost more than her yearly income, Jonathan Hale barely looked at her before stepping aside and letting her in. No handshake, no smile. Just 4 words. You're here, good, follow. She followed. The house was silent, impeccable, cold. He walked her through marble halls without saying much. Then, in a sun-drenched kitchen too perfect to ever be used, he finally turned around and said, You'll clean here, 5 days a week. Cash every Friday. You'll use the side door. You don't speak to guests. You don't ask questions. She nodded. I understand. He looked at her for the first time. Really looked. And something in his expression shifted barely. A flicker. Like recognition or unease. But it passed. You start tomorrow. She bowed her head slightly, turned to leave. But he added one last thing. Why did you apply? She paused at the door. Because I needed a miracle. He didn't reply, just stared as the door closed behind her. He didn't know that Elena wasn't just looking for a job. She was looking for something far deeper. Something buried. Something that once burned in flames and left scars no mansion could hide. The next morning, Elena arrived early again. She stood at the side entrance, the one meant for staff out of view, out of mind. As the door creaked open, she stepped into a different universe. Warm floors, clean air that smelled of fresh linen, and silence. A silence that wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. Every step she took echoed slightly, as if the house itself was listening. She'd cleaned big homes before, but this one felt watched. Not by cameras, not by people, by something older, heavier. Jonathan wasn't home that morning. A note waited for her on the granite counter. Stay on the first floor. Don't enter the study. Leave by 4 p.m. She started with the living room. Massive windows framed a view of the garden like a painting. Every surface gleamed. Yet Elena dusted, wiped, and polished. Not because it needed cleaning, but because it gave her time to observe, to breathe. On a shelf, near the fireplace, she found the first crack in the perfect mask. A photo, framed in silver, black and white. A boy, maybe 9 years old, standing beside a woman who radiated warmth. Not beauty warmth. Her arms wrapped around the boy's shoulders tightly, like she was holding on to him, or protecting him from something. It was Jonathan. Younger, smaller, but unmistakably him. Elena stared. Her hand trembled slightly. She knew that woman. Not from photos. Not from news. From memory. From the screams of a house burning down 15 years ago. She placed the photo back carefully. Too carefully. As if afraid it might shatter the moment. The rest of the day passed in mechanical rhythm. Floors, kitchen, dining room. Her movements were silent, precise, almost invisible, the way she had learned to survive. At 3:40 p.m., as she was finishing polishing the staircase railings, the front door opened. Footsteps, confident, familiar to the house. Elena froze. Jonathan walked in, speaking on the phone. His voice wasn't cold, it was calculating. Something about stocks, a failed merger, pulling the plug on a company. He walked right past her without noticing. But then, he stopped. He turned halfway and looked at her. "What's your name again?" he asked. Not really curious. More like filing away a fact. "Elena," she replied. He studied her for half a beat longer than comfort allowed. "Do I know you from somewhere?" Her heart punched against her ribs, but her face stayed calm. "No, sir. I don't think so." A beat. Then he nodded and walked away. Upstairs. To the study. To the room she was told never to enter. That night, Elena walked home with a storm growing in her chest. Jonathan Hale didn't remember her, but she remembered everything. Elena's apartment was smaller than Jonathan's walk-in closet. One bedroom, peeling paint, a flickering light bulb in the kitchen that buzzed every time she boiled water. But it was home. And in that cramped, crumbling space was her entire world, Sophia. 8 years old, brave, curious, sick. Sophia had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition a year ago. The treatments were expensive, the side effects were brutal, but it wasn't the illness that scared Elena most. It was the quiet way Sophia had started to give up, like she didn't want to be a burden anymore. "Did you eat today, Mommy?" Sophia asked weakly from the bed. "I did," Elena lied. She hadn't. Every cent had gone to bus fare and pain medication. She sat beside her daughter and smoothed back her hair. "I got the new job. At the mansion." Sophia tried to smile. "Will they let me come visit?" Elena shook her head. "Not this one. It's complicated." Sophia didn't ask why. She never did. Just nodded and reached for her mother's hand. Later that night, Elena sat at the kitchen table with her old journal. She opened it and flipped past the lists of bills, medications, and borrowed money. She stopped on a page marked only with a date. The 18th of October, 2009. The fire. The night everything burned. Her mother had died trying to stop a man from hurting someone. A rich man. A violent man. Elena had seen it with her own eyes, hidden behind a curtain, clutching her doll as the flames licked the floor. There were no arrests, no justice, just silence, and a child with no home. She had carried that night like a stone in her chest ever since. Until now. Now, fate had placed her inside the home of Jonathan Halitha, son of the man her mother once tried to protect someone from. Coincidence? Maybe. But Elena didn't believe in coincidences. Not anymore. The next morning, before leaving for work, she kissed Sophia's forehead again. "I'm going to fix everything," she whispered. "I don't know how yet, but I will." Outside, the city buzzed with noise, but Elena heard only the promise she'd made, and the fire that still burned quietly inside her. Elena had been working at the mansion for nearly 2 weeks when the rhythm changed. Until then, her days had been predictable silent cleaning, cold stares from Jonathan, and nights of aching feet and unanswered prayers. But that Thursday, something shifted. She had just finished vacuuming the corridor near the study, the one she was still forbidden to enter when the front door burst open with a gust of wind and perfume. A tall, elegant woman in a white coat and blood-red lipstick swept into the house as if she owned it. "Jonathan?" Her voice rang out, confident and cold. Elena peeked from behind a corner, heart racing. The woman moved with purpose. Sharp heels, sharp gaze. She didn't notice Elena, of course. Women like her never did. Jonathan came downstairs, annoyed. "Veronica, what are you doing here?" Veronica. Elena froze. She remembered that name. Her mother had whispered it once, barely audible, on the night of the fire. Veronica. The woman everyone was trying to protect. "I'm here because your lawyer keeps harassing mine," Veronica snapped. "The estate is settled. I want nothing more from your cursed family." Jonathan clenched his jaw. "Then stop threatening to expose things that have no proof." They moved to the study, slamming the door behind them. but the walls of the mansion had thin skin. Elena stepped closer, pressing her ear against the doorframe. "You know what your father did," Veronica hissed. "You know exactly what happened that night." A pause. Jonathan's voice, low and dangerous. "Careful what you say in this house, Veronica." Silence. Then, footsteps. The door opened. Elena darted back around the corner, pretending to clean. Veronica passed her with a glance that lingered half a second too long. "She doesn't look like your usual staff," she said to Jonathan. "Be careful who you let near your secrets." With that, she was gone. The house was quiet again. Jonathan stood alone in the hallway, staring at the photo Elena had noticed weeks before the boy and the woman with kind eyes. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there, haunted. That night, Elena stayed later than usual. As she dusted the study door again, she slipped something from her pocket. A thin wire. She inserted it into the locker fingers, steady, practiced. A soft click. She pushed the door open an inch, then froze. Inside, she saw papers spread across a desk, legal documents, old newspaper clippings, and a photo. A photo that made her knees almost buckle. It was a burned house. Her house. The headline: "Mysterious fire leaves child orphaned. Mother dies in blaze. Suspected domestic dispute." Elena backed away, heart thundering. It wasn't coincidence. It was connection. Jonathan wasn't just part of her past. He was the living key to a truth buried by money, lies, and fire. The next morning, something was different. Jonathan was pacing in the living room, speaking with more urgency than usual. His usual coldness was cracked. Something had shaken him. Elena entered quietly, as always, and began cleaning the windows without a word. But her eyes watched every movement. "I can't find it," Jonathan muttered into the phone. "It was in the study drawer. I haven't touched it in weeks." A pause. He gritted his teeth. "No, it's not just a necklace. It was my mother's. The last thing she gave me before she died." Elena froze, her rag halfway across the glass. His mother's necklace. The silver one with the sapphire teardrop. She had seen it before. On the same night her house burned. Her mother had described it once, in a whisper, like a secret too dangerous to speak aloud. A sapphire the color of regret, hanging from a silver chain that never tarnished. That necklace had been on the woman in the photo, and now it was missing. Elena waited until Jonathan left again. Then, with steady steps, she walked to the study. She no longer hesitated. She entered and went straight to the drawer. Empty. But beneath it, hidden in the crack between the bottom panel and the wood frame, something shimmered. She reached down. There it was. The sapphire. She didn't put it back. She didn't steal it either. She kept it. Not as a thief, but as a guardian, a witness, a woman who needed answers and leverage. That night, she placed the necklace in a velvet pouch and hid it inside a box beneath her daughter's bed. When Sophia asked what it was, Elena just smiled gently. "A key. One day, I'll explain." Days passed. Jonathan grew restless. He began arriving home earlier, watching Elena more closely, asking small questions disguised as politeness. "Where are you from, Elena? How long have you been in the city? Do you believe in fate?" Each time, she answered simply, calmly, but always with a note of silence at the end, an unfinished melody that left him unsettled. She wasn't afraid of him, and that scared him. One afternoon, as Elena polished the grand piano no one played, Jonathan entered quietly. "I'm thinking of selling the house," he said suddenly. She didn't look up. "Why?" He hesitated. "It's full of memories. And ghosts." Finally, she looked at him. Sometimes, the only way to silence a ghost is to listen to what it's been trying to say. He didn't respond. He just stared at her, confused, maybe even moved. Then he left. But that night, as Elena walked home under the streetlights, she knew something had changed. He was beginning to feel. And she was just getting started. The key didn't come in a dream. It came as a mistake. Late one afternoon, while dusting near the fireplace, Elena noticed something odd. A book was slightly out of place on the shelf. When she tried to adjust it, the entire row shifted, and behind it, a narrow metal box tucked deep into a hidden niche. It was locked. Of course it was. But Jonathan had left the study door ajar that morning, and when he went out, Elena had quietly taken a set of keys from a coat pocket, just for a moment, just to try. She waited until the house was quiet. Then, with hands that barely shook, she placed the silver key into the lock. Click. Inside the box were papers legal, yellowed, and covered in old signatures. Deeds, trusts, affidavits. But what caught her breath was a folder labeled in bold black ink. Morales Incident, Internal Notes, 2009. Her hand gripped the paper so tightly it crinkled. She opened it. Inside were scanned police reports, unsigned statements, and photographs. One showed a burned-out shell of a home. Another, a young woman in a white tank top, her mother. Eyes fierce. Face bruised. Another document. Subject: Elena Morales, minor, age 7, presumed orphan. No legal guardian located. The ink blurred as her eyes filled. They knew. Jonathan's family had known. There were annotations in the margins, settled quietly. No press. Property transfer to Hale Estate. The truth slammed into her like a wave. The fire hadn't been an accident. It had been covered up. Hidden. And she had been erased. All these years, while she struggled to survive, the Hale name had been kept spotless. Her mother's sacrifice scrubbed from history. Her own pain buried beneath marble floors and expensive lies. She put everything back as it was. Except one thing. She took a single photo. The one of her mother, standing in front of the house, holding a baby Elena. That night, she showed it to Sophia. "This is your grandmother," she said softly. Sophia's eyes lit up. "She looks brave." "She was," Elena whispered. "She still is." Sophia traced her fingers over the photograph. "Is that you?" "Yes." "You look so little." "I was." "Were you scared?" Elena didn't answer. She just smiled. But deep inside, something shifted. A quiet rage. Not the kind that destroys, the kind that builds. The next morning, Elena didn't wait for Jonathan to speak. She walked into the study with a cup of coffee and placed it gently on his desk. "I know about the Morales file," she said. Jonathan stiffened. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, "How much do you know?" "Enough." His face paled. "You should have told me," she said, voice steady. "I didn't know how." "Then learn." She turned and left, leaving the photo of her mother on his desk. No threats. No demands. Just the truth. And the silence that comes after a bomb has dropped, right before the dust begins to settle. It was a strange invitation. Left on the kitchen counter, scribbled in Jonathan's stiff handwriting. "Dinner. 8 p.m. dining room. Dress appropriately." Elena read it 3 times, trying to understand the intention. It wasn't kindness. It wasn't control. It was curiosity. Or guilt. Or both. She stood in front of her cracked mirror hours later, holding the only dress she owned that wasn't stained from cleaning products or time. Navy blue, modest, simple. The kind her mother used to say made her look like someone who belonged somewhere. Sophia sat on the bed watching her, small fingers brushing a doll's hair. "Why are you going to dinner at your job?" she asked. Elena smiled. "Because sometimes people need to remember who you are, even if they never really knew." At 8 p.m. sharp, she entered the grand dining room. It was surreal. A table set for 2, candles, crystal glasses, a meal catered by someone she never saw. Jonathan stood at the end of the room, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked surprised when he saw her, not because she was beautiful, but because she carried herself like she belonged there. He gestured to the chair. They sat, For a while, they ate in silence. The clink of silverware against porcelain was the only sound between them. Then, "You've changed the house," he said. "How so?" "It's warmer, quieter, less angry." She didn't respond. He took a sip of wine. "I read the report. The one you left." She nodded. "My father wasn't the man people believed he was. But I didn't know the details. I was just a child." "So was I," she said softly. Their eyes met across the table. No hate, no pity, just two ghosts finally recognizing each other. "I didn't bring you here to apologize," he continued. "I brought you here because I can't stop thinking about the fact that you walk through this house like you've always known it. Maybe I have." He tilted his head. "What does that mean?" Elena leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. "It means this house has always belonged to women like me. Women who are invisible until someone needs something scrubbed, covered, erased." He sat back, quiet. "But not anymore," she added. "I'm not here to haunt you, Mr. Hale. I'm here to finish what my mother started." A long silence followed. Then, almost to himself, Jonathan asked, "Was she the one he tried to silence?" Elena nodded. "And you?" "I'm the echo." The candlelight flickered between them, as if acknowledging the shift. They didn't speak again that night. When the meal ended, Elena stood. "Thank you for dinner," she said. But as she reached the door, he asked one final question. "Why didn't you walk away?" She turned slowly, eyes steady. "Because walking away would mean accepting the lie." And with that, she left. That night, Jonathan stayed in the dining room, long after she was gone, staring at her empty glass, wondering how someone who had lost everything still carried herself like she owned the truth. Because maybe she did. The next day, Jonathan didn't show up for most of the morning. Elena cleaned the mirrors, wiped the marble floors, and dusted the photo frames with her usual precision, but everything felt heavier. The air, the silence, her own thoughts. At noon, she went to the library to return a vase, but Jonathan was already there. He stood by the fireplace, holding a small box. The sapphire necklace. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "I found this in my mother's old jewelry case, but the last time I saw it was when I was 9. Elena's breath caught, but she didn't flinch. Jonathan finally turned to face her. "You've known who I am since the beginning," he said. "Yes. You knew about the fire, about your mother, about mine." "Yes." "Then why didn't you say anything?" She stepped closer, voice steady. "Because if I had told you the truth from the start, you would have locked the door, paid me to disappear, or worse, ignored me." Jonathan swallowed hard. "So you pretended to be a maid, just to get close?" "I didn't pretend to be anything," she said. "You just saw what you expected." That hit him. He looked away. Elena continued. "My mother worked for your family for 2 years. She cleaned, she cooked, and she protected people she shouldn't have had to. Your father hurt someone. She spoke up, and she paid for it with her life. That was never proven." "She's not here to prove it," Elena said sharply. "But I am." Jonathan's hands trembled. "My father was a cruel man. I've spent most of my life trying to escape his shadow. But you're dragging it back." "No," she said. "I'm dragging it into the light." He stepped closer, eyes wild. "Why now?" "Because my daughter asked me once if I was ever afraid. And I said no. But I lied. I've been afraid for years. Afraid I'd never be more than the girl who survived a fire. Afraid I'd always live in silence. But not anymore." Jonathan's voice dropped. "You could destroy everything I've built." "I could," she said. "But I won't. I don't want your empire. I want your truth." Another silence. Then, gently, almost like a plea. "What do you want from me, Elena?" She paused. "I want you to remember her name, Marta Morales. I want you to speak it, in public, on the record. I want you to acknowledge that she mattered." "And if I don't?" Elena stepped back. Then I'll stop being the maid and start being the voice you can't ignore. She turned and walked away, leaving Jonathan alone with the necklace and the weight of everything he had tried to bury. It was a night she could never forget. Even if she tried. Even if she begged her memory to let it go. The 18th of October, 2009. Elena was 7 years old. Her hair was tied with pink ribbons. She had just finished eating rice and beans while sitting cross-legged on the kitchen floor. Her mother, Marta, was humming softly as she cleaned the counter. Outside, the wind howled. It was supposed to storm that night. But the storm came from inside. It started with shouting. A man's voice. Loud. Aggressive. "Elena, go to your room," her mother said, her smile suddenly gone. Elena obeyed but didn't close the door. She peeked through the small crack, the one between the wall and the wooden frame, and what she saw carved itself into her soul forever. A tall man, Mr. Hale Sr., red in the face, fists clenched, screaming at a woman who was crying. Not Marta. Another woman. Younger. Blonde. Veronica. "I told you not to open your mouth," he shouted. "She didn't," Marta said, stepping between them. "Leave her alone." "You think you can protect her? You work for me." "I'm not afraid of you." His hand moved so fast. A slap. A crash. Veronica screamed. Then fire. It's still unclear how it started. A knocked-over lamp? A broken bottle? But within seconds the curtains caught. The tablecloth. The couch. And then everything. Marta grabbed Elena, dragging her out the back door. But smoke already filled the hallway. "Run!" her mother screamed. "Don't look back." But Elena did. Through the smoke, she saw her mother run back inside. She never came out again. The fire trucks arrived too late. There were no charges, no arrests. Just whispers. A quiet payoff. And a funeral with no headlines. Elena ended up in a shelter. Alone. Terrified. Carrying the secret no one wanted to hear. Now, years later, the memories burned just as hot. That night, after the confrontation in the library, Elena sat at Sophia's bedside, holding her tiny hand. "I saw her fight for someone she barely knew," she whispered, "and no one fought for her." Sophia looked up, sleepy. "But you are, right?" Elena kissed her forehead. "Yes," she said. "I'm fighting for all of us." Outside, thunder rumbled across the sky. But inside that small room, a different storm had already begun. One that wouldn't stop until the truth rose from the ashes. The next day, Jonathan was waiting for her. Not in the kitchen, not in the study. In the entrance hall, standing like a storm held in a suit. The moment Elena stepped inside, he snapped, "We need to talk. Now." She stayed still, calm, silent. "I gave you work. I gave you money. I trusted you in my home," he growled. "And you repay that by threatening me with stories from a past I never asked for?" Elena stepped forward slowly, her voice a quiet blade. "Your past is not a story, Jonathan. It's someone's grave." He flinched. "You think this makes you noble? Blackmailing me with your pain?" "This isn't blackmail. This is truth. And the difference is that truth doesn't need to be paid to be told." His voice rose. "You want to destroy me?" "No," she said firmly. "I want you to confront the man you've spent your life trying not to become." Silence. The air in the room was heavy, thick with things unsaid. He stared at her, jaw clenched, fists trembling. "You're fired." Elena's breath caught for a moment. But then she smiled. "Do what you must," she said. "But just know this firing me doesn't make the fire disappear. It just confirms that you were never ready to put it out." She turned, ready to leave. But Jonathan's voice, now cracked, stopped her. "You think I haven't suffered too?" Elena turned back slowly. "Suffering is not the same as silence. I had no choice. You did." She stepped closer. "You had the money, the power, the voice, and you chose silence." He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw it. Fear. Not of her. Of the truth. Of what he'd become. Of who his father still was inside him. Elena placed something on the table by the door. The sapphire necklace. "I don't need this anymore," she said. "Because I'm not here to take anything. I'm here to return something that was stolen." She walked out. Not as a maid. Not as a victim. As a woman who no longer carried the weight of someone else's shame. Days passed. Elena didn't return to the mansion. She found other cleaning jobs, smaller, harder, but honest. The kind that left your hands bleeding and your soul proud. At night, she sat by Sophia's side, holding her daughter's hand while she slept. The hospital visits were getting more frequent. The medication more expensive. Still, Elena refused to regret anything. She had spoken her truth, left the necklace, walked away with her dignity intact. But something unexpected happened. One gray afternoon, while Sophia was resting after another painful treatment, the nurse stepped into the room with wide eyes. "Miss Morales, there's someone here to see you." Elena stood slowly, and then he entered. Jonathan. Not in a suit, not in arrogance. Just a man, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers in one hand and an envelope in the other. Sophia sat up weakly. "Mummy, who is he?" Elena was frozen. Jonathan cleared his throat. I heard you like flowers." He handed them to Sophia, awkwardly, like a boy on his first day of school. Sophia blinked, then smiled. "They're pretty." Elena said nothing. He turned to her. "I didn't come to apologize. I came because you were right." She raised an eyebrow, arms folded. "I was raised to bury things, to rewrite stories, to win at all costs. But you made me realize I've been living in a house built on silence." He handed her the envelope. Inside, a receipt. A full year of private hospital care. Paid. "I don't want anything in return," he added quickly. "I just wanted to do something good. Something that wouldn't erase the past, but maybe honor it." Elena stared at the paper, then at him. "You didn't have to." "I know." She nodded, eyes misty. "Thank you." He smiled, small, honest, unsure. And then Sophia spoke again. "Are you rich?" Jonathan laughed nervously. "I guess so." She looked at him, innocent and serious. "Then why do you look so sad?" That question hit deeper than anything Elena could have said. He didn't answer, just looked at both of them. And for the first time, he realized something. He had never been truly seen before. Not by the world. Not by himself. Until now. The morning was quiet. Sophia was stable. The hospital room smelled of lavender instead of antiseptic. And for the first time in years, Elena didn't wake up afraid. She stood by the window of her apartment, watching the city pulse below. Life moved on fast, loud, unbothered. But something inside her had stilled. It was time. She didn't go back to the mansion to say goodbye. No drama. No final confrontation. Just closure. She placed a few things into a small wooden box. A worn-out photo of her mother holding baby Elena. The scorched newspaper clipping of the fire. The sapphire necklace. And a single handwritten letter. No name on the envelope. No signature needed. That afternoon, the box was delivered to Jonathan's estate. When he opened it, he paused. Everything inside was familiar, and yet now, it felt like an entirely different weight. His fingers trembled as he unfolded the letter. "Jonathan, some truths aren't meant to be buried. They aren't weapons. They're keys. My mother died protecting someone. You now know her name, her story, her sacrifice. I don't want revenge. I want remembrance. You have the platform I never did. The money, the voice, the surname. You can speak, and the world will listen. So speak. For her. For every woman who was erased. Not to make up for what happened, but to make sure it never happens again. That's how silence ends. Not with noise, but with truth. E.M." Jonathan sat in his chair for a long time. He reread the letter, then looked at the necklace in his palm, the same necklace his mother once wore, that Elena's mother had tried to save. And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a Hale. He felt like a man given a second chance to become something better. He opened his laptop, and he started to write. Not a press statement, not a legal document, a confession, and an acknowledgement. The world was about to hear the story of Marta Morales, because the woman who once cleaned his floors had cleaned something far deeper. His conscience. It began with a post. Just a few paragraphs, uploaded quietly to Jonathan Hale's personal website. No PR team, no logo, no press release. Just a title. The woman my father tried to erase. The post included names, dates, receipts, photos. It told the story of Marta Morales, a housekeeper who died in a fire protecting another woman from abuse. A fire silenced by money. A tragedy erased by privilege. A life forgotten by design. And then it told another story. Of a girl who survived that fire. Of how she grew up, poor and invisible, only to walk back into the very house that tried to destroy her family. Her name was Elena. The post ended with a single sentence. I was raised in a house of silence. Today, I choose to speak. The response was immediate. It went viral in hours. News stations picked it up. Articles flooded in. Some criticized Jonathan too little, too late. But most focused on Elena. Her courage. Her patience. Her choice to walk away with dignity instead of burning it all down. For the first time, Marta Morales became more than a footnote in a sealed police report. She became a symbol. Elena refused all interviews. She had said what she needed to say. But one day, she walked past a mural being painted on a wall near her old neighborhood. It was her mother's face. Strong, beautiful, holding a child in her arms. The words beneath it read, "She protected more than just a house. She protected hope." Sophia looked up at her mother and smiled. That's Grandma? Elena nodded, eyes misty. That's who she was. And who are you? Elena smiled softly. I'm the reason they remember her. From that day forward, the Morales name meant something. Not because of scandal, but because of truth. And the way one woman refused to be erased, no matter how long it took. Months had passed. The media storm had faded. New scandals took over. The internet moved on. But some things remained. A new foundation had been created in Marta Morales' name, focused on protecting domestic workers and survivors of abuse. Jonathan Hale had stepped down from his board roles, sold the mansion, moved into a smaller home. Simpler, quieter. And Elena? She started a small cleaning company. Not just for income, but as a way to offer dignity, training, and protection to women like her mother. She named it Marta's Hands. One afternoon, a letter arrived. No stamp, no return address. Just a handwritten note. If you ever want to say goodbye to the house properly, the door is open. Signed, J.H. Elena hesitated. Then she went. She brought Sophia with her. The mansion looked different. Not because the walls had changed, but because she had. Jonathan opened the door himself. He looked older, but lighter, like someone who had stopped pretending. They didn't hug. They didn't need to. He nodded once, and Elena stepped inside. Sophia ran ahead, laughing down the marble hallways, the same ones her mother had once walked in silence. I made a few changes, Jonathan said quietly. Tore down the study, turned it into a library, added a photo wall. Elena walked over. Framed on the center wall, surrounded by soft lights and white space. A photo of Marta Morales. Below it, a quote, "The silence ends when one voice refuses to stay quiet." Elena's throat tightened. Sophia stood beside her, holding her hand. She looks strong, the girl said. She was, Elena whispered. And now, she's seen. Jonathan walked over, unsure. Thank you, he said. Elena looked at him not with forgiveness, not with anger, with peace. You don't have to thank me, she replied. Just keep listening. They shared a quiet moment. Not as enemies, not even as friends. As people who had finally faced the truth. Outside, the sun was setting. Warm light poured through the windows, wrapping the house in gold. Elena turned to leave. But before she stepped out, she looked back one last time. The house wasn't cold anymore. Not because it had changed, but because she had walked through it and left the door open behind her,